Good morning, people, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing. It is Wednesday, the 16th of May. Is it the 16th, Joshua? I don't even have
15th, one day out.
15th. Yeah, I'm wishing the days away. I'm joined by Joshua Barry. How's it going, Joshua?
Yeah, going not bad, Derek. Thought we might be coming on for another crisis podcast this morning, come halftime at Ibrox last night. But ended up being a pretty good second half performance, and I think actually the angriest I've seen Clement post match in the press conference last night. So a lot of interesting points in relation to why his team were so bad in that first half, and Todd Cantwell's performance and other details as well. So plenty as ever to get into.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we do that, just a quick word for our podcast sponsors. MPH Boilers have got those brilliant Viessmann boilers on offer. German engineering can't get much better than that. They've got the free internet controller that they throw in with every purchase. You get the first year service free, and they've got flexible finance options as well. So do go and check them out, folks. The all important links are in the description below. Now, how do we? Where did we start with regards to this? It was interesting, the match yesterday, a game of two halves, if you like. Rangers losing two bad goals, it's fair to say, two goals in quick succession, something that we've seen happen all too often of late. But they responded, Ross McCausland reducing the deficit just before half-time, and then 4 second-half goals without reply. Cyril Dessers, goal number 22 of the season, with a good header to level matters. Todd Cantwell with a cross-come shot, shall we say. I think he meant it. Let us know in the comments if you disagree. But a wonderful finish from Todd before Scott Wright came off the bench and netted a double late on. So Rangers round off their home league fixtures for the season with a victory against Dundee. It delays the inevitable Celtic away to Kilmarnock this evening, where if they avoid defeat, they will win their third successive title. Someone on Instagram last night, Joshua, when I was on with Chris, said that if Kilmarnock win 1-0 and St Mirren beat Celtic 1-0, Rangers just need to beat Hearts 3-0, and then the league is coming home.
Simple as that, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, well, listen, had Rangers lost last night, it would have been toxic. And I think actually, Derek, had Ross McCausland not scored that goal before halftime, it would have been even more toxic. I know we'll get into what Philippe Clement had to say, but he used last night as a perfect example of what is wrong at Rangers and what can be right. And a lot of it came down to, and I think interestingly, Cantwell epitomised that. A lot of it came down to his team's work off the ball. Got just a quick race chart here to show how the shots materialised. And you can see in the first, Rangers are the blue line, Dundee are the red line, if you don't know what this means. Every indent qualifies a chance, and the greater overall value of chance, obviously the higher up the chart goes. And you can see, Derek, in the first half, at half-time, I think Dundee had a higher expected goals than Rangers. Rangers' expected goals was, the chances they'd created were very similar, around 0.7. That completely changed in the second half. That in itself shows the kind of game of two half cliche. But what Clement said, which was interesting, was it wasn't as if he said, look, yeah, we just used the ball better in the second half. We played with greater intensity. He, as we'll come on to see, spoke specifically about his team's work off the ball, which stopped them conceding transitions, which allowed them to pen Dundee back compared to the first half, where there was moments in that first half, especially when the game went 2-0 and Dundee got a free kick wide on the left-hand side, where you really thought if they get into the box again here, they could score, because Rangers lacked kind of aerial dominance, I think, last night with their lineup, but also it just looked like they were going to fold completely. So important that they came back before halftime. Leon King's pass, he was at fault for probably both of the goals, at least one, but his pass into McCausland was excellent, and it was a brave pass in that context, and it helped create an avenue back in for Rangers, and then they played well in that second half. But another game where it's taken them going 2-0 down to really get going, and that was obviously the context of Clement's press conference post-match.
Yeah, I'm going to fire up what Philippe Clement had to say. That graph clearly shows that he had a few choice words at half-time. They got a bit of the Belgian blast, and this is what Clement had to say afterwards.
And take lessons out of this. This is the perfect example. Today, boots off the pitch at halftime, and a lot of applause after the game, because people enjoyed how they saw the team play, how they saw how we scored, how aggressive they were, how they win the duels, how they didn't concede in the second half. So this is the perfect example. And I hope, and I'm gonna put a lot of attention to that again, to get this out of these last 2 games. But it needs to come out of the players.
That's slightly worrying, Joshua. The players, I mean, a lot of experienced pros in there. They should not have to get a grilling from the manager to start playing better. I know he was not happy with the off-the-ball effort levels from his team in the first half, much better in the second half. Does he have a point, do you think? And how worrying is that it takes... I remember Steven Gerrard used to say, he used to be one that is in press conferences where he said they had to give them a few choice words at various points. Surely they should know by now to go out there. It's Dundee, for heaven's sake. Go out and win the game. To go 2-0 down really is... that tells me of a poor mentality, shall we say, and they need a kick up the backside from the manager to get them going.
Well, if we go back to Ross County a few weeks ago, that's probably a post-match press conference that Clement's wanted to give for a while, but he's had to wait for his right moment. He's a manager that you can see it publicly, but if you speak to people privately about him, he always wants to back up his players. He wants to create that type of relationship of trust with them, which is why I don't think really have seen him throw them under the bus whatsoever. I don't think that's throwing the team under the bus, because I think anyone at the game last night could see that, and you don't want to defend your team to a point of harming yourself at points, which is never going to help any manager. But that is exactly what happened in a game like Ross County, even a game like Kilmarnock, Derek, where the tempo of how Rangers start a game, or the tempo of how they start a second half, failing to learn the lessons of the first half, gets them into a sticky situation. I remember just before the Ross County game, we had an article on the website, and we did an extra podcast on the number of transitions that Rangers had conceded at home against Hibs in 3-1 win. And they'd won, and everything was fine, and they were still on course to go top of the league if they won their games in hand. But they whether it was the manager not learning lessons or whatever at that point, Rangers' lack of intensity, I would say, that we saw in that first half last night is a factor. And Clement went on to say, and it's worth a watch the entire press conference, which you can see on our YouTube channel or read in full on the website. He also goes on to say, in specific relation to Todd Cantwell as well, that players, the difference between good players and top players are the players that are there in every single moment, on the ball and off the ball. And he was making a point last night, because I think he was saying to his team, as you showed in that clip, you can't rely on me to get angry and show you a way out of this. You need to, if you play for a club like Rangers, start at that intensity on and off the ball, and that to be a guarantee. And again, if you go back to the weekend, when did we see it last? When have we seen it in so many old firms? When Rangers have lacked that, and it's hard to define. It's kind of an intangible, but I think the basic word is probably an intensity, off the ball as well as on the ball, and that's cost them so much. So that was probably a lot of built-up frustration from Clement's point of view, but he was totally vindicated it in saying it last night, especially with a few games of the season to go, and everyone could see it at Ibrox, because it was so clear between the first half and the second half.
Yep, that's what he had to say on Cantwell, Clement, in his post-match press conference. Here he goes.
This second half, yeah. That's the thought I want to see every time. And then he makes the difference, and then he gets stats, and then he's important for this club. And it needs to be this fire, desire, every time, with and without the ball, not only one thing.
So there you go. That's what you had to say on Cantwell. So not best pleased by him in the first half, Joshua. A few comments coming in on Cantwell. We'll touch on him in more detail now. As I mentioned, thought he took his goal well. He was much better in the second half. A few folks saying he looked a bit teary-eyed at the end of the game. Some worried that perhaps he may be moving on in the summer. That may be the case. I've not heard of any teams looking to prize him away at this point. What did you make of Cantwell last night?
Probably it was a good indication of his Rangers career so far. And at times, I think the circumstances have been worked against him, and it's been difficult. I wrote in the lead up to this game about the Rangers midfield, more specifically on Nico Raskin, who I thought had a good second half as well. But just looking at the fact that there's been no continuity in there, so it's difficult to judge. Cantwell had a really poor old firm at the turn of the year, wasn't it? But he's been moved into so many different positions. There's been managerial change. He's had 2 injuries, and he still had good moments in the season. But it's probably difficult, and he referenced this in his own press conference a few weeks back. It's difficult to reach your top level when that is the case. But also, as Clement is suggesting there, you also need to always help yourself. And there was a difference between his first half performance and his second half performance. I don't think anyone doubts his quality, and people will know watching the video that I'm definitely someone who has been more in the pro Cantwell side over the last year or so. But it's about the small intangibles that allow you to show that consistently, because in moments of that second half, you felt like he was totally running the game. The difficulty is Rangers need to see him do that probably more consistently. From his point of view, he might say, well, the style has changed and he's getting on the ball less and it's more direct, and the midfield composition is changing quite a lot. And I think that is true. What I think you have to take out of last night, Derek, is that has to be your starting midfield. Maybe Dujon Sterling comes in there somewhere, but you imagine he's going to be required in a different position, as has been the case all season. You have to play 3 technical players against Celtic that can compete with him in there. And Cantwell needs to, I guess, take it upon himself to back up that performance in a big game with that intensity that Clement wants. Because again, you can see the frustration in his answer there. He knows how good a player he can be. Clearly, from his point of view, he has felt frustration with him at points throughout the season. But Cantwell really made the difference last night with the goal, which I'm not sure he meant, but it was a good strike nonetheless. But also the assist. I think the assist was more the moment for Dessers, where it was him creating it, him having the freedom to move out left, putting that ball into the box. His role has changed since Beale left. When Beale was here, it was all about having total freedom to move where he wanted, a slower pace of game. Now it's quicker. There's more positional restrictions on him, which we saw come to a head right at the start of Clement when he conceded that, or led to conceding that goal against Aris, giving the ball up in the opposition half. Yeah. So he's fitted a lot into this season. I still think he's had a decent enough season within that context. It'll all depend on next Saturday. You have to say, I'm sure, though, Derek, that he's going to be picked because he's done enough last night, I think, to show, especially alongside Raskin and Diomande, that he can give Rangers a bit more of a platform in there, and showed how good he can be in that second half when everything is switched on.
Yeah, when he's on form, he's Rangers' best player for me. But we haven't seen it enough. Rangers on tour sums it up. Players need consistency. Cantwell hasn't had a consistent team around him throughout the season. Add in his injuries, it's been a very stop-start season for him. But I think, especially with the cup final on the horizon, Rangers need their best players on that park, and Todd Cantwell is certainly one of them. Interestingly, I thought it was an interview to Sky after the game. I watched it afterwards, after the post-match video that we recorded. He was asked about, was the win much needed? He says we had to. Obviously, 2 sloppy goals in the first half, so we needed a reaction for the fans. And about his goal, he says, well, he meant it. I'm not interested in talking about that, to be honest. Obviously, we had a disappointing result last weekend, so we had to win today. That was the bottom line. Man, a few words.
That means he 100% didn't mean it. But yeah. still a great finish. But I agree with that first comment, Derek, that again, look at the Celtic midfield, where they've had, in the 10 Old Firm games since the start of 2022-2023, they've had 2 of McGregor, O'Reilly and Hatate in every single midfield. Those 3 have played together, I think, on 5 or 6 occasions, and it's only been 1 player coming into that midfield when they've been in form or there's been a rare injury. The roles have been defined, the style hasn't changed that much, people know what they're doing in that fixture. Rangers midfield has been doing something different in every single Old Firm almost in those last 2 years, and that, in big moments, I think, in big games, makes a big difference. So Clement has struggled to find consistency because of the fitness issue that he's talked about consistently throughout the whole season. He would probably have helped himself by establishing a first-choice midfield in bigger games quicker, and I would be surprised if Cantwell and even Raskin after last night certainly don't start at Hearts on Saturday and then aren't involved at Hampden come a week on Saturday.
Yeah, what do you make of Raskin last night, Joshua? I thought he was much improved, like the whole team pretty much in the second half. They dominated for large spells in that second 45 and however many minutes were added on at the end. But that midfield, do you think we'll see that midfield at Tynecastle as well? The Diomande, Raskin, Cantwell trio?
Hope so. Do you know what game I was thinking of last night? Do you remember Ridvan just before, I think it was... When did Rangers beat Hearts 1-0 away from home? I want to say early December when Sima scored the only goal.
Yes.
Danilo, it was. I think it was the start of December, and I remember Ridvan last night. And again, I'd been someone who had taken some flack for saying that Ridvan was going to be a good player, and it was a year and a half in, and he'd still not done much. And I remember that night doing a post-match video, I think, with yourself, saying he's still not quite showing it. He'd had some individual mistakes on that day, but he just needed a few games to get into the swing of things, come back, and for the first 2 months of 2024, he was Rangers' best player. Last night, you see the what he brings and the variation he brings from left back. There was a moment inside 10 minutes where he got the ball, turned on his man in the middle of the pitch and hit a shot over the bar. Clement was only meant to play him, he said, 45 minutes, but he played him slightly longer on the recommendation of the medical staff to only play him 45 minutes, that is. And when Robbie Fraser was about to come off the bench initially, Ridvan took the ball in his own half, ran through the entire Dundee midfield and put a shot over the bar, and Clement turned to Robbie Fraser and told him to sit back down for 5 minutes. Fraser came on and I thought did very well, which is worth mentioning. The point being, I think it is difficult to judge players, as the Rangers on Tour comment said a few minutes ago. It is difficult to judge players when there's so much change and when they're not playing over a consistent number of games. Raskin is going to have that between now and the end of the season. My opinion on him is just Lundstram did have a few good months. He can't deny that, especially at the start of the year. Think back to a win away at St Mirren when he created the goal for Dessers, a win away at Hibs when he created the goal as well and scored. But Raskin, if he was given a similar number of games, I think you would see the benefit of that in his performance levels. He's not had a great season. No, there is, of course, questions about his game. But for me, what he gives you, it takes away from what he doesn't. And last night I thought was a good step in the right direction for him ahead of that cup final, because if it was up to me, which it is not, people will be glad to know, it would be that midfield three, maybe Dujon Sterling coming in one of those positions. But I just think that Rangers have to have a midfield that allows them to compete in possession, because too often they've bypassed the midfield in Old Firm fixtures, and I just think that gives up control.
Yeah, lots of interesting comments coming in. Maka with a point here says Raskin can find Lundstram to the bench for the cup final, Derek. No offence to John Lundstram, I don't want to see him in the Rangers jersey again this season. And if I think Philip Clement puts him back in that midfield on Saturday, the 25th of May, I can only see one outcome, Joshua. Rangers need legs in there. They need guys that are going to cover ground and are going to put up a bit of a fight in the middle of that park. It is essential that Rangers win the midfield battle in that Scottish Cup final. John Lundstram isn't a part of it for me.
Yeah, it would be a brave call to bring Lundstram back in, because he'll be suspended for the Hearts game, will he? Yeah, listen, I think you've got to show loyalty to players at the right time. That was Borja Barisic's last game at Ibrox last night, and he didn't get a send-off. We spoke about that pre-match. Kemar Roof did come on, but what, it didn't feel like it was a sentimental move. It felt like it was more to give Dessers a rest. And we should say, from what a header that is from Dessers, that's one of his best goals he scored for Rangers so far. You've got to be loyal to the players in the right moments. Clement is right. Lundstram has played a lot of games for Rangers. I don't think he's had good spells. He's had bad spells. I just think that managers need to be loyal to players at the right time. And if you're offered the majority of people a midfield selection for next Saturday, I don't think Lundstram would be in that because of that action to put Rangers down to 10 men a couple of weeks ago. And I'd be surprised if Clement does start him. You look at the bench last night, though, and options are going to be very limited potentially when it comes to that game against Celtic for Rangers in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, some interesting other points. Just on the young players that came on, Denzel thought the young lads did well coming on. Fraser is great pace. Jury's still out on King. And Blazing Blue 72 says, Derek was correct on Robbie Fraser. He and Ridvan, assuming Ridvan stays, have the left-back position covered. Well, they may very well do. I think there will be a bit of noise regarding Ridvan in the summertime. But Robbie Fraser, I thought, did well when he came on. And as he points out as well, his post-match interview was very professional. Looks like a boy, talks like a Rangers man. I thought he did do that as well. There's a reason why he's captain of the B team. Got good leadership qualities, speaks well, Joshua. And he's 21 years of age. He's not a kid anymore. But I thought he took his chance well last night. Were you surprised that he came on instead of Bonner?
Yeah, kind of. Well, he's bided his time, Robbie Fraser, hasn't he? And a lot of players have had their opportunities when he's been one of the main players in the B team. And he came on in the game he came on at a difficult moment in the game because Dundee had put 2 strikers up front. Rangers ended that game with a back 4 of Cole McKinnon. A bad day for the move James Tavernier higher brigade as he moves to centre back instead. Ben Davies and who was at left back, and Fraser at left back. So it was and I actually thought Tavernier had a pretty good impact at centre half, won a few headers. It shows you the reality of Rangers' defensive situation. But Fraser was, as you say, chosen over Barisic. He gives you more pace, more direct. Not watched tons of him for the B team. But obviously a slightly different profile. You did think that Barisic would maybe come on and get some form of a send-off. But again, it's not the same as last season, Derek, because there's something still to play for. And that has to supersede individual player situations, especially when it's not as if it's been a player who's been here for 10 years and has had no dips in form and has been absolutely brilliant for the football club. So I thought Fraser took his opportunity well, and we'll see now between now and next season if that's going to continue. One thing that Clement did say, we've not got a clip of it, again, it's worth watching, or it's on the website as well. He specified one of the changes he's made to try and bridge the gap between the youth team and the first team had been training time, saying that Ross McCausland, what was it, only 5 times Ross McCausland had trained with the first team last season, effectively making the point that players cannot be ready to make the jump up. In his opinion, if that is the case, the likes of Cole McKinnon, John Lee Efeko, Robbie Fraser have been in and around the Rangers first team a lot. So Clement was making the point that when Cole McKinnon slots next to James Tavernier in defence, he's used to playing alongside him. He's comfortable being around him. It's not as if he's only jumped up to train with him irregularly. So that was an important point in relation to not only Ross McCausland's emergence, and I thought Ross McCausland was very good last night and scored a really important goal for Rangers at 2-0, but also in relation to Robbie Fraser coming off the bench with Cole McKinnon and others.
Absolutely. This is what you had to say, incidentally, the manager on, I thought was interesting, talking about the young lads getting an opportunity in the squad. He says, we are working from October, from the first day, on the integration of all the young lads. We are busy with that also for next season, and also guys who are not in selection today to get them into the squad. It's an important thing. They've been training a lot with us to get the principles, to understand the demand in the first team. For example, Ross McCausland last season trained 5 times with the first team, 5 trainings with the first team. You cannot be ready to step in. We are busy with this program to get integration into the first team as much as possible in our training. It's not like suddenly Cole McKinnon or Robbie Fraser needs to play with Tavernier next to them. They have so many times in the dressing room together, so many times on the training pitch together, that they feel comfortable with them. The other guys also, they know the qualities. We're going to continue with that. It's a major part the club needs for the future to get also money in by producing or making players better, getting younger players in to make them better, to sell them on. Also, for sure, out of the academy, making players who can be starters in the first team. That needs to be the model that we will build the next couple of years. It is not the work of 1 week, 2 weeks, 6 months, or even 1 year or 2 years. It is an important thing. That was important. We gave chances to Ross to be a symbol of the academy, and out of that, Cole, Robbie and John Lee and the others, they feel it's also possible, and it gives belief. That is what they are showing. Does it mean they are ready to start every game and to play every game? Not yet, but I hope they are going to challenge all the others. For me, it's important how old. It's not important how old somebody is. So that is what the manager had to say on the young lads featuring in the squad last night. I think we'll see them at Tynecastle on Saturday. Joshua, I said to Chris last night, I wouldn't mind seeing a sort of similar youngish team that we've seen. Remember when they run to Seville, when Gio, pretty much the B team, they went to Hearts and they wiped the floor of the Jambos that afternoon. I wouldn't mind seeing a few young lads getting an opportunity, maybe from the off in the game. Or do you think that the manager, with one eye on that Scottish Cup final, will be looking to go strong?
No, I think Clement will treat that as a dress rehearsal with the strongest team possible for the upcoming Scottish Cup final. Not dissimilar. He chose the strongest starting 11 available last night. There was not many options. We'll get an update at the press conference on Friday as to how close certain individuals such as Abdallah Sima, such as Dujon Sterling, are to coming back into the Rangers team. But don't expect it to be similar to that day. That was obviously a day where Alex Lowry scored a fantastic goal, and what was that, 2 years ago, and obviously hasn't really played much for Rangers since. But expect Clement to probably not deviate much from the team he started at the weekend. Last night. Ridvan has to be in there. I'd keep Raskin and Diomande and Campbell in there as well. Ross McCausland deserves to be in there on the basis of his performance last night. I thought you saw some good touches from Fabio Silva alongside Todd Cantwell. We had a piece a few weeks ago, didn't we, with his former coach at PSV, who was speaking about that's how you get the best out of him, not when he's isolated out wide, when he's playing in combination with other players. Dessers will obviously continue to lead the line, and as I mentioned a few minutes ago, a fantastic header to get Rangers level off the back of that Todd Cantwell cross. That's just my instinct, because there is a Scottish Cup final on the horizon. And if you look at the likes of Raskin and Cantwell and Ridvan, they've not played a ton of football recently, so you probably want to give them another 60, 70 minutes at least in the build-up to that one.
Yeah, and as Ian Edwards quite rightly points out, he says, will we see a young team against Hearts if Kelly win tonight? No, we won't, because as long as it's mathematically possible that Rangers can still win the league, then I think Philippe Clement will be going, and quite rightly, as strong as possible in that game. Interesting point as well coming in from Tam Brown. I seen him walking into Ibrox last night. Surprised he wasn't part of the match day squad. The manager, I don't think he mentioned it last night as well. He says that where was Jack? Of course, he played in that B team fixture against Queen's Park at the tail end of last week, Joshua. But he never got the Ibrox send off last night. Wasn't even involved. Is he injured again, do you reckon?
It would be probably a case of he's been out for so long. When did he last kick a ball? October, I want to say, November. So I'd imagine
he came on at Benfica, I'm sure. Did he come on?
So he did, for the final 10 minutes. He did, you're right. That aside, obviously hasn't played much football. Clement, I don't think is going to, at this stage, when there's so much to play for, is going to sacrifice anything or risk sentimentality clouding. And I know people would say it's like someone like Ryan Jack does deserve an Ibrox send off, but I just think that Clement's full focus would not have been. It was so different to last season when there was nothing to play for, and it was 5 or 6 players, and a lot of them had, such as Arfield and Morelos and Kent, had been really big players for Rangers at different points. Obviously Ryan Jack has as well. The whole focus from Clement will be on the cup final, and won't want to, I'd imagine, cloud that in any capacity. There was a small lap of honour. Some fans didn't stay. It's important to mention that the Union Bears that didn't stay for the lap of honour, and people well within their rights to vote with their feet in those moments, obviously, as well, aren't they? But some fans did stay as Rangers, the Rangers squad made their way around the pitch. All focus has to continually be on the Scottish Cup final, though, because that will really dictate the mood going into the summer, and the moods, how this season really is reflected upon, even if it can't really be a total success if they didn't obviously lift the league title. Yeah.
Ross with the point says it was in the warm-ups last night. Strange that he didn't walk around the pitch at the end, especially if he was definitely leaving. So, interesting one. Whether he features at the weekend remains to be seen. We'll just wrap up 1 or 2 points that sort of caught my eye. This one sort of missed yesterday with the build-up to the game. Robert Grant says, Derek, what's the deal with the Yefte deal? Of course, this the Brazilian left-back that was all set and prepared to sign for Rangers in January, but Borna and Ridvan did not depart, so he stayed with Apoel, where he's currently on loan from Fluminense over in Cyprus. And now Apoel are looking to exercise his release clause and sign him on a permanent basis. So that is their aim. Their club president told a Cypriot radio station recently. So it remains to be seen what's going to materialise with that. Rangers may look to acquire him. It depends, of course. Well, they will be looking for a left back. I'd imagine Borna will be departing. Ridvan, as I touched on a little earlier on, whether he stays or goes, who knows? I would like him to stay, but if a big money offer was to come in, then he may be away as well. Robbie Fraser, I think he's out of contract, if I'm not mistaken, also. So as an area, you'd imagine Rangers might not just need one player, Joshua, they might need 2 players.
Yeah, maybe. Obviously, Ridvan, I think the majority of people would say he's someone to build around. There is still that fitness question that has plagued his Rangers career since he came to the club. As ever in the transfer window, it was very dependent on who goes out and what type of money you can get for a player going out. And there isn't a lot of guarantees always about certain positions, but definitely expect Rangers to be in the market for at least one left back. Borna Barisic is leaving. Looks like he's definitely on his way to Turkey. You watched Ridvan Yilmaz last night, and he is a player that I think you look at and think Rangers should build around him and he should be a fundamental part of their team. But again, there is that question of how many games can he play. That ties into the overall context of what Clement has spoken about repeatedly, why he feels he needs a pre-season. And I think we will get more detail from him probably in pre-season or at the start of next season as to what he feels has been such an issue. He obviously said in his press conference last week that the issues he has communicated internally about what needs to change in the medical department in relation to injuries will stay private until further notice. So, yeah, that should be an entertaining press conference when that one comes around.
Yep, of course, it's one of a number of positions Rangers will be looking to strengthen in the summertime. A rebuilding job is on the horizon. Right, that'll do us there. Thank you to each and every one of you for interacting with the show as ever. It's much appreciated. Tomorrow we'll have, for those of you that are Rangers Review Extra members, we'll have our Q&A show. And then on Friday, of course, as we touched on it, is press conference day ahead of the final league game of the season as we head over to Gorgie. Right, thank you to Joshua as ever, and we'll speak to you a little later on. Bye.